Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, I'm joined by Lisa Calicchio, who's the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Capital Management Officer at WCG Clinical. Welcome to the show, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Hello, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Where are you tuning in from today?
I am tuning in from apparently the midst of tropical storm. Is it Isaias? I'm not even sure how to say it. But also it is just approaching central New Jersey in the United States momentarily. So hopefully Mother Nature gives us a little bit of a reprieve and there's no power outages while you and I are chatting.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that response. I didn't know that coming into the call. we don't know what a tropical storm is in the UK, so we have no idea of what you're referring to. Is this pretty normal?
We have, I know they're known as hurricanes and cyclones, just a very, very big wind and rain event. Although right now it just seems to be more wind than anything else. So again, hopefully Mother Nature will keep the winds down while we're chatting.
Yeah. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
So I was born and raised in New Jersey in the United States, although my father is from Portugal and my mother is a second generation American. So I've had the benefit of having some different cultural immersions throughout my whole life because of my father's background. And my career journey has taken me to many, many places. So I very much enjoy learning about other cultures, other people, and just how they see life. I tell everybody life is my laboratory, every day's learning. And it's just, I take it all in, the good and the bad. Someone once said to me, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So every experience is a good experience and just be thankful for every day.
Love that quote. That's a great
quote. I do. I'm a quote queen. Those who know me know I'm a quote queen.
Really?
So,
well,
that's one of my favorites.
Amazing. Is this a route that you took, coming in your career? HR, was that the plan, or you kind of just fell into it? It seems like 99% of the other people I spoke to.
Chris, I wish I would tell you that I had this strategic plan and I knew what I wanted to do my entire life and I pursued my dream, and I couldn't be more wrong. I would probably say most of my career has been opportunistic and accidental. So landing in human resources for me actually felt right when I got here. Didn't set out to do this, but now I can't imagine myself doing anything else. Although I will say I've spent parts of my career going in and out of the line and the business, which I very much enjoyed, but I always feel that pull coming back to human resources and human capital. So it's my happy place. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I can tell from the last few conversations we've had. You never know what life's going to throw at you, and a perfect example is this new role that you've just taken, right? Who would have thought that you've taken a new role as Chief HR Officer during a pandemic, right? How was that?
Well, let's just say, again, I would love to tell you that I'm this very strategic and I had all planned it. I probably would not recommend starting a brand new role 5 days before the entire organization flips on its head and goes to work remote. It's made onboarding a little bit challenging, but we figure out different ways to do it. I am blessed that I am working for an organization that literally is on the front lines helping search for a cure and a prevention for COVID-19. WCG helps run clinical trials more effectively and efficiently. So we have a front seat to the action, and couldn't think of a place that I would rather be, especially at this time in the world. So we are very much hoping that we will be part of the eventual cures and treatments that are brought to market.
Yeah. What did that look like? Did that kind of have to fast track some of the plans you had? Because typically, when you start a role, speaking to your peers, they spend maybe the first 6 to 12 months building those relationships internally, kind of assessing the landscape before making any real change, right? As well, whereas kind of you were just straight into the deep end.
Probably. I think that's a good way to put it, Chris. I started on a Monday, and on Friday, the decision had been made that the organization was going to a remote arrangement out of safety. Again, we're in clinical trials. We follow the science, and the leaders of our company had obviously been watching this extremely closely. And I was very proactive before many other companies actually made the call. Our company was one of the first. And so My 90-day plan, which included traveling throughout all of our sites and meeting people and seeing the business live, obviously that had to switch as well. So I like to say I digitized my onboarding experience, and folks were just very gracious and lovely. I lived by my hard copy org charts initially, and thankfully everyone's been so gracious with wanting to do videos. And so it's been very engaging in a different type of way.
Yeah, I know something which is kind of what we're going to talk about a lot today on the show that you've stood out to you is, empathy is now the new competency of leadership, right? Something that you're really passionate about. Could you share more about your thoughts on this and how you feel this is going to impact organizations and employees moving forward?
One of the things that I noticed as things were starting to really emerge with the pandemic was it was almost instantaneous. It felt like to me, this switch to how do we care for employees? You had employees that were just thrust into a whole new set of dynamics. Working remotely was new to many people, or working remotely exclusively was new to many people. You had layered onto that the situations with the schools abruptly closing. I don't know that the schools were even fully prepared to transition to a remote environment. And so unfortunately, what I witnessed in my circle was many of the parents bore the brunt of that, having to all of a sudden teach their kids 6th grade algebra. If I were in that situation, I would probably say to my child, "You pass, you're good."
You teach me.
Yeah, exactly. And I was touched, and I was in awe of how, again, it just seemed like in an instant, company leadership really just focused in on the well-being of employees. Physically, certainly, we wanted to make sure that in our company, our employees were physically well and that no one had COVID or any other type of life-threatening circumstance. But there became a lot more focus on how people were doing emotionally. And what I have found in many years, in human resources and in business, Chris, is that there's a vulnerability to that a lot of people either are not comfortable displaying, or people think as you in the UK, just keep calm and carry on. Keep that stiff upper lip. Don't bring your emotions to work. Muddle through whatever you need to muddle through, but just continue to focus on the work, being productive, and that's it. It was very one-dimensional. And now, again, in a moment, it has become all about how are we supporting our employees' physical and emotional well-being, and understanding the many different things that are on their mind. The fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty. How do I get my work done? How do I contribute in a meaningful way while making sure that my kids are engaged and not feeling social isolation? So there's just this whole new set of emotions that have just made their way into the workplace. And I feel like for the first time, it's okay. It's okay when someone says, "How are you doing?" And the employee says, "Not well. Here's all the things that are on my mind and that are just eating away at me. Can you help me?" It's been an extraordinarily difficult time for so many people, but I think this has been a wonderful byproduct of that circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Do you think part of that is that for the first time, this has kind of been like the great equalizer, because no one's not affected? I can't think of any other example in my lifetime, or any, to be honest, in history, where everyone's affected. So it kind of makes it a bit easier. We're all kind of almost bonded over this collective crisis that we're going through as well. Do you think that's part of it?
I do 100%. I love that you said that. I'm reminded of a time early in my career. I was in a very junior entry level position, and I had been asked to go interrupt a meeting to pull someone out of a meeting who was a senior executive in our department. And the reason that I was asked to pull that person out of the meeting is because the gentleman's wife was on the phone. Apparently their child had gotten into some trouble in school, and the principal was calling a meeting and wanted the parents to come in.
God.
So the wife called at work, and the individual was tied up in a meeting. So I was sent to collect him. And I just remember thinking, wow, I mean, here's this big senior executive of our company and his kid's in trouble with the principal. He's just like us. And so now, you fast forward many, many years and, you're seeing examples of that play out over and over again. I'm sure you, like me, Chris, we sit on video calls, days on end, hours on hours. And, you've got people of all different levels, the dog's barking in the background, the child's hungry, the child can't figure out, how to get on their Zoom for the teacher to teach. And you've got all of these, distractions that are, pulling and competing for your attention. It doesn't care what level you are or even what part of the world you're in. I've talked to people in Japan, who've had some of these same struggles. So it's a great equalizer, but I also think it's a great unifier for all of us. Whether you have children or not, you have been touched by the same set of circumstances and concerns and anxieties globally. So really, the world has united, in its fight against COVID-19. But I also think the world has united around how this really has just further humanized us all. And there's just so much commonality among us as humans.
Yeah, I felt like I'm learning more about my friends, peers, colleagues than I've in the last few months than I have in our entire relationship that we've known each other, because it feels like a sense, and I'm not sure, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that it's now okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay that you're not always positive and feeling great. And, it's now for people feel comfortable, right, to share how they're feeling. And that's a big deal.
It is. I am a big fan of Brene Brown's work on vulnerability. I watch her TED Talk. It's one of the most loved and watched TED Talks of all time. And I watch it once a month, literally, because I just learn something new or I emphasize things for myself over and over again. And I think that there is just empathy comes from that vulnerability. You open yourself up to what's troubling you or where you need help. And to me, what I find, and this is what's so wonderful about the human spirit, instead of people generally judging, I find that people will close in and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. How can I help? How do you bear this alone? And I've loved watching that happen, both personally and professionally. I have, a situation in my own personal life, someone very near and dear to me has struggled for quite a long time with anxiety and depression, and often in silence, because either you just don't talk about those things at work, or will I be judged? Will I be seen as less competent? And I've watched this person, come to terms with that even before COVID-19. I've watched the individual come to terms with that, and it's almost been freeing. And, as he talks about where he needs support and help, I've just been moved to tears as I've watched people come in to say, oh my, I had no idea. What can I be doing to support you? And I think whether this is in a personal situation or a professional situation, I'm watching that happen more and more. Anxiety and depression are, particularly at this time, just, quite intense. And I think a lot of people who probably maybe never felt it before are feeling it now. And it's just, again, it's equalized and it's put people on a whole new level of being empathetic and relatable to each other. So, amongst all the bad things with COVID-19, there's really been some positives in the human spirit that I've just loved watching.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we spoke on our first call, right, about, I mentioned to you about me coming to terms with my own anxiety and depression and sharing that openly over the last year, which is a big moment for me to kind of share that after a lifetime of just hiding it from friends, families, loved ones, as well. And the support system that I had going through COVID was people knew, that Chris suffers with anxiety and, just probably going to be a tougher time for him. And they kind of rallied around me. And I can only imagine for other people out there that don't have that support system, that actually can't get to that support system because they're isolated at home and they can't see their family and loved ones who are typically that support system. It's super important now more than ever that we share that. For me, I realized the power of me being vulnerable is there's other people that hear my story and say what you said. Really, Chris? you do the LinkedIn live show, you're always so outgoing. Surely not you, right? It's normally the response that I get. But there's so many people out there that have reached out during COVID and have said, "Oh, I'm feeling in the same way." So I think it's super important that we lean into our vulnerability. For me, I feel like it's one of my biggest strengths now as a
Yeah,
leader.
I agree. And I think, as you and I were talking about even what to call this this session, I truly believe that this whole, every company says our talent and our people are our greatest asset. But it was rather one-dimensional. It was about get your work done in the best way and contribute and, have meaning in your professional life. And I think companies have pivoted, whether it's stories like yours or even just, among groups of employees. Now companies are taking more proactive steps to say, how can we support you personally? And I think about the school situation. I actually was just reading an article last night about, how society is coming up for other ways to support parents who are caught in this dreadful situation of really not being comfortable sending their children to school, or the schools aren't open, yet they have to work full time. And so what are ways that the private sector and the public sector are coming together, and people even as individuals, to support people, because they realize people are our greatest asset, but they're people underneath. And so I think companies now, where they may not have said, in the past, well, the fact that you don't have daycare, I feel really bad for you, but I'm sorry, I can't help you. Now I'm seeing companies, including ours, looking at, okay, what can we be doing? What can we be pointing employees to? How can we be bringing flexibility? What other means are there? And, it's become a big part of our work in our human resources department at WCG. And I'm part of a networking group of about 100 other HR leaders. And we're all just trying to figure out, how do we now support employees more holistically? There's a renewed emphasis on wellness, physical and emotional wellness. And I think emotional wellness has now earned its place at the table as something that needs to be cared for and supported, just like physical wellness and just like productive relationships in the workplace. So it's so much more available, for me to help people and others to help people if I understand what's on people's minds, what are they most concerned about, and they're willing to reveal that to you, whereas they might not have. Now everybody's talking about the anxiety and, the fear of, our lives are just changed and there's no answers, and what do I do? We're bonded by it. So if that's the entry point and that gets us to this new place of empathy, then fine. I don't care how we got here. We're now here. And it's a new dimension of how we care for our employees as our truly greatest asset.
Mm-hmm. Has this sort of time made you kind of rethink and reassess everything, and a lot of processes and policies you have in place? Are you now reassessing a lot of those?
Yeah, we are. I mean, obviously, we keep an eye on what's going on around us. As I mentioned, I'm part of this wonderful networking group who shares very openly and what works, what doesn't work. We've had to look at not only our processes, but also how do we help managers? We have many managers, and I'm sure our company's not alone, who've not managed in a remote environment. And remember, they're people too. So their kids are not in school right now. So they're trying to manage the family life, and they're trying to manage teams, and it's remote. So these dimensions are very new, coming together at the same time for a lot of our managers. And how do we really help our managers support their employees? I've always been a big fan of manage the work, not the time. And I think that this now underscores the super important aspects of management, like setting clear expectations, giving good feedback. It's very unglamorous, unsexy stuff. Performance management.
Even more important now with all the uncertainty.
It's more important now, Chris. Exactly. The best thing that you can be doing is be clear with your employees around, here's my expectations. If you can get your work done in, this set of hours, and this is what you need to balance family obligations. If you're delivering, if you have to check out for an hour or two during the day because you've got to tutor your child on spelling, but after your child goes to bed at night, you're finishing up. you have to figure out what works for you. And I think that we just have to be open to maybe some new dynamics of work that don't revolve around time, but they revolve around meeting deliverables and expectations. And I think that's where a lot of managers are looking for support. How do I get better at doing this?
Mm-hmm. Something we were talking about on our first call, right? And I said moving from the industrial economy to the people economy, we have to get rid of those old, outdated, the 9 to 5, the 8:30 to 5:30, because that was invented right during back then when you needed a huge workforce to build a railroad. It doesn't work in the same environment that we're in right now. But most managers are trained that way, and most processes in organizations are designed that way as well. So it's pretty tough. And also from I can only imagine as a manager, not only just dealing with the day-to-day work, but also the uncomfortable conversations. They're probably not used to having those conversations with their employees, right? How are you supporting your managers? Are you providing any extra training for them, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I would probably describe it, Chris, as in our company, we're doing a lot of what I'm calling micro coaching. So we have the standard training programs that many companies have designed to really develop managerial competencies. But those trainings are like a dip, right? There's a dip, you go in, you come out, you go on your merry way, and you're hoping that people are applying what they've learned day to day. What our partners are really focused on is that day-to-day coaching, the checking in, the being part of regular meetings, putting things on the table. One of our partners actually just did a wonderful session for our technology organization on how to recognize and prevent burnout. I mean, let's face it, technology groups in many companies are carrying the load. I mean, you've got the entire world is digital, or much of the world is digital at this point. And the IT professionals, at least in our company, have really just gone above and beyond. I don't know when these folks are sleeping. That's one of my concerns. Are they getting enough sleep? So really doing sessions like, how do you recognize burnout? What are the professional recommendations? But also let's talk amongst ourselves. What are things that you found have worked for you? Mm-hmm. Another thing that our company is doing, and I'm so proud, we've been doing this every week since we went remote. Every Monday, we host a town hall. It's hosted by our president, Don Diasso. And every Monday, we give an update on what's going on in the science of COVID-19. We have very credible information that our chief medical officer has to sift through to separate fact from fiction. We talk about how the business is doing, and then we talk about how we're caring for our people. And we're using those sessions on Mondays to talk about topics like balancing work and family. This particular week, we did a session on effective communication. Just like we're focused on physical hygiene, let's wash our hands, let's wear our mask, we're focused on organization hygiene. How are we communicating effectively through email? None of us can handle email inboxes that have 300 emails a day. It's not sustainable. Now you layer on the fact with everybody trying to also deal with their kids and emails coming from the schools. How do we just get better? So we're using these micro coaching moments on a regular basis to keep this in front of folks. And we're trying to keep it simple. The session I did this week was 6 tips to increase effective communication. Keep it simple, keep it easy. They're quite basic, but again, it's like diet and exercise.
Yeah, we all know what to do, but do we actually do it?
Exactly. And part of it, Chris, to get back to your comments, is let's talk openly about how we're feeling, and let's talk openly about what other support we need. I can't promise that I have a solution for everything, but I've also found that sometimes just connecting folks who are sharing a common challenge, just that in itself, sometimes people, they just want to talk. They just want to be heard, and they just want to know that somebody cares. And whether you suffer privately or you're willing to talk about this with a group, I've just heard a lot of feedback from employees saying, I had no idea that others, I thought I was the only one who couldn't cope with this or who is feeling overwhelmed. I'm in HR, I feel overwhelmed, and we do this for a living. So we're really making it safe now. And that's where I love that empathy is now becoming a competency that we're getting a lot of practice demonstrating, particularly our people managers, because they're people too. Their kids are out of school too. So I love your phrase. It's the great equalizer and it's the great unifier.
Yeah. And to that point, for me, with my anxiety, that was the biggest surprise, is that I thought I was alone. I thought I was strange, and I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want to make fun of me or think that, think a certain about me. And then when I started speaking about it, some of my closest friends and family members have been suffering in silence the same way, like, and they thought the same thing. I was like, really? Wow. Like, I just thought it was just me, just Chris, and just kept it cooped up for so long. So just sharing your story and knowing that there's other people that feel the same way is huge. For me, like, it's just a weight lifted off my shoulders that I'm not this, outcast that feels that certain way as well. Even you sharing your own story with me in our last call, it means a lot. And showing that you care, like, I saw your post on LinkedIn and someone wrote below it, it's not how much you know, it's about how much you care. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it as well, because sometimes you don't have to have all the answers. And I think it's all the organizations that I think have done really well during COVID that have been super transparent with their employees and have been open to say, we don't have all the answers, but we're here to listen and we care. And I feel like that is just the right way of going about it. And people will be super engaged, bought in, and they'll understand that no matter what, Lisa's going to give it to me straight, and we're going to know where we stand. And in a world with so much uncertainty, at the very least, we can do that for our employees.
Agree. I've long been a proponent of transparency. People just want to know where they stand. They want to know that they matter. I think sometimes leaders in particular put all this extra pressure on themselves that I've got to have the answer. I'm a division president or I'm vice president of XYZ, but I don't know the answers. And I personally have always found, and I'm a pretty transparent person by nature, if I don't know, I'll tell you. I don't know, or I don't understand this. Can you help me? I struggle with this. This is not my strength. And again, I've always been pleasantly surprised on how supportive people are that will rally around you. Whether I'm trying to work through complex calculations on our benefits plans, which that math can get really, really intimidating very quickly. Thankfully, I have other folks who love it and they can dumb it down for me. To people who will come to you personally and say, I don't know if you're aware, but I have a disability that is not visible to others, but it shows up in certain ways in the workplace, where I don't feel that I can be included. And how do you recommend that I manage this? Everything in between. So it's now okay to be human, Chris, in the workplace too. I mean, obviously we always try to be professional and respectful, but I just love that we now have created safety in allowing people to really bring their whole selves to work. Like yourself, like my very close family member who has anxiety. He said, when I no longer had to hide it. I think you said this to me, and I said this to him, and he said exactly. My biggest fear about anxiety, my biggest source of anxiety was about having anxiety. Yeah. And what happens? What happens if somebody finds out? Will I be judged?
Yeah.
And now you've got this, preponderance of empathy, where people are not only not judging, but people are just rallying around to say, we collectively as a society own this, or we collectively as an employer own this. What can we be doing to help? And we're making it okay. And we're now understanding the extent to which our workforce sometimes suffers in silence. Not because we're doing anything wrong, but previously you never really talked about certain things in the workplace. And now there's a commonality where whatever the source of your anxiety has become secondary. We're all going through some degree of anxiety and fear and uncertainty and discomfort. Everybody's feeling it for whatever reason. And so now we're rallying around how can we solve it together, regardless of the origin. And I love that. I just love watching all of these unique solutions and people that are just taking the lead where there is no solution and saying, okay, there's none, we're going to build it. Somebody the other day told me this, it kind of is relevant here. I was interviewing a candidate and he said, if you're an airplane engineer and you build airplanes, you don't spend your time complaining about gravity. You figure out how to keep the plane in the air. And I thought that was brilliant. I'm like, absolutely.
Very
and
relevant.
So, you look at what's going on around us, and we've not figured out COVID-19. but we've got to keep the plane in the air. And so what are the ways that we can keep the proverbial plane in the air amidst everything going on around us? The ingenuity and innovativeness and level of compassion and empathy, I think, is unprecedented, at least in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. But I've kind of never felt like I fit more in than I do now. Don't feel like an outcast.
There is a big relief in knowing you're not alone, Chris. And just, like we talked privately, when you start opening up and you talk to others, at least I think I heard a statistic, at least 50% of society walks around with some type of anxiety, whether it's on a regular basis or a given time. 50%. You are not alone. That gives you comfort to know that you're not alone, and there's others who can help, or at least just say, yes, I really do understand. And that in itself, I find, just reinvigorates the human spirit.
It's really interesting also and concerning that, as we discussed with your own family member and me and every other person I spoke to, that the majority of their anxiety is linked to the fact they have anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that? Like for me, I was like, I'm anxious and I'm anxious because people are going to know I'm anxious. And then it's just like this vicious circle. But as soon as you have that ability to say, pick up the phone to my wife or my employee or anyone and say, I'm feeling this way, can you chat to me for a little bit? Or I need a break, or whatever it may be. That alone is just unbelievable. It's hard to describe. But if anyone who's listening to the podcast right now and is going through something like that, what I'm referring to and what Lisa's referring to, and feel free to reach out to me honestly anytime, I'm sure. But yeah, we're all in this. So what are your hopes for the future? Because we're hearing this whole new world of work, right? We're hearing, there's a lot of I feel like we're kind of in it now. The future of work is kind of here. It's been fast tracked, I think, foremost. But what are your hopes moving forward of what the sort of new workplace environment or work in general is going to look like?
Well, first of all, I hope this newfound sense of empathy and wanting to help the workforce holistically survives the pandemic. I think it's a good thing. And honestly, we in human resources, we spend our careers in pursuit of this. And now it took a crisis and it's here. How do we continue to just keep it alive, where people are our greatest asset? By what they contribute personally and professionally in caring for people as whole people. I certainly hope that we've learned a lot and we continue to carry those lessons forward. I think we also, I look for a day where management really, as a profession, being in a management type of role, it really does become about managing the contributions that people make versus the punching the clock. Work looks very different now. You've got people working all kinds of different schedules, frankly, because they have to. There's you even yourself, you talked about your wife, how you and she tag team and, with your young daughter, Robin, I believe is your daughter's name.
Yes, Robin.
And so, being a parent is a full-time job, as you know. So I hope that the embracing that work can still get done and we can deliver quality work and life-changing work, but in new ways. We've proven it. We're doing it now because we have to. And so I'm hoping that the willingness to entertain ever-emerging creative ways of working and adding value not only survives, but it also opens up the workforce to people where it may not have been accessible. So you may have people who are sitting on the sidelines simply because they can't work a structured schedule. I have a personal situation, or 100%. My brain just isn't wired to work from 8:30 to 5 a day. Some of those folks I find just self-select out because they just don't see a place where they fit. And I think now a lot of things go that we never thought would work. And so I'm hoping that this also helps the gainful employment of the workforce, because you now have people who might normally not have ventured in coming in. I think the other thing about, we've got to just automatically move people all over the place because they need to be, quote, where the office is. I think those days are maybe, starting to fade. And I think that that's a wonderful thing, because you've got talent that sits in different parts of the world and people develop family structures around where they are. And, I've always been a big proponent of, if you hire great talent, wherever they sit, they'll make it work. And I've seen it. I've I had an individual on my team many, many years ago who was remote. And I remember one day when somebody, one of her clients said, she doesn't work at the headquarters. She's so responsive. I had no idea. Nope, she doesn't. And it's not relevant.
Pulled into every meet. She's not pulled into every other meeting throughout the day.
Yeah. And honestly, Chris, it wasn't even relevant where she sat.
Exactly.
Her contributions were relevant. So I think that this is creating just a whole new opportunity for an expansion of the talent market for both the seekers and the employers. And I think that's going to stick because we're proving it now. And I've even heard, different companies who normally, no, you have to be in the office 5 days a week or travel. I've heard people backing off of that saying, wow, we're producing incredible work in a different way. This works. And I love it. I'm loving it.
Mm-hmm. I had a comment on LinkedIn. Anantha said, do you think that empathy is going to help people operate better in a VUCA world?
I do. I do. I mean, VUCA by its own definition, there's uncertainty. And I think just being empathetic, that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. We will live through it together. And if we stay connected with each other, we'll figure out ways to power through. So absolutely, I do. I've always been a huge fan of empathy and vulnerability. It's what makes us human. And that's at the core of who we are. And we keep going back to this, Chris. We're not alone. There's times where I sit here and think, I can't be the only person in the world who doesn't understand complicated pension calculations. I just can't be. And there's just comfort in someone else saying, you know what, I really don't understand it either.
Okay.
Let's get somebody who knows this and sit down and explain it. You know what, pension calculations for dummies, right? So for everybody who has a need, there usually is somebody else who's willing or can help. And now we're connecting because we're more open about it. Yeah,
even during my own example, obviously, as an events company, we were hugely disrupted during this. And the team, obviously, 80% of our revenue was kind of wiped out overnight. And the team obviously naturally looked to me of, Chris, what we're going to do. And I was like, I don't know. I was going to vulnerable about it. Let's sit down and discuss it as a team because I don't have all the answers, that may worry other people, but for me, I'd rather be transparent with the team and say, I don't know, but let's sit down and have a conversation about how we think we can move forward and get through this. And that's what we did. But if I was all on my own, sitting there trying to come up with an answer myself, it's just, I think it's actually worse for my employees because there's uncertainty there. They don't know what's going on. We haven't heard from Chris. What's happening? Are we going to be furloughed? Is the business still going to survive this? Instead, I was like, let's do it. Let's pull through this together. And it's not easy, especially as the CEO and founder of the company to say, I don't have the answers. And to be able to do it, but there is a strength in that as well, and it also means my team are very comfortable to come up with new ideas, to challenge what we do, to the innovation that comes from that, because we create a culture where it's okay to ask questions and to challenge what we're doing as a business.
Well, I go back to I'm sure you've heard about this as well, the landmark Google study of what makes effective teams. And the number one factor in making teams and organizations successful is psychological safety. And that's what you're talking about. You're making it okay to say, I don't know, I don't understand. I don't live in fear that I'm going to be judged or perhaps even fired because I don't understand a certain situation. And that psychological safety, when you lead the way, as you've done, you now make it okay for others. And I had a similar experience a few years ago. I still remember it vividly. It touched my heart. We were in a meeting with the senior team, and I was asked a question. And I said, honestly, I don't know. This is something I really struggle with. I don't know. I need to think about this. And someone came up to me afterward and said, that was a game changer to hear someone on the senior team say that out loud. You now made it okay for others to say, I don't know either. Can we band together to solve this? Because we're all off in our own trying to figure this out on our own because we don't want to appear dumb. And by you just saying those simple words, those 3 words, which many business leaders fear those 3 words, you made it okay. And so you've done it for your team. I've had wonderful experiences. I find that the creativity of solutions is even better
100%.
when you get a whole bunch of people saying, okay, you know, none of us understand this. Let's really pick this apart and let's just throw a whole bunch of things at the wall and work our way through. It's wonderful what comes of it. So that psychological safety, I think, is very, very empowering and conducive to success in the workplace, in any situation, honestly.
And those are the type of companies of those cultures who are going to come through this better off, through this pandemic, that are going to come through and they come through on the other side, that have a culture where people, you know, will come to the table with their ideas, not worried about being, you know, being wrong or being made fun of or whatever it may be. They're the companies that are going to do really well. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it throughout this organization I'm speaking to. You can see it straight away when you speak to the leadership team as well. And I worked in many companies where it was the opposite. And I'm sure if everyone listening probably can relate. You don't really want to. It's just like, you know, you don't really say it because if it's wrong or I fail, then there's consequences, right? Whereas there's other companies I speak to now that actually celebrate it. They have, you know, they do their end of year, you know, award ceremony, and they have an award for the biggest failure of the year, and they celebrate that failure and say, great, because at least you were trying, at least you were pushing the boundary. They celebrate failure on the same level as success. And that's kind of, I think, super important coming through all of this for companies to come out better off.
That's the reason one of my favorite quotes, as I said earlier, is experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. And failure is included in there. Every experience counts for something. It may not be the one you wanted. It may not be the one you love. But you are smarter and you are more empathetic and you are just better with every experience that you have. And I truly believe that. I try to live my life that way. You know, even I would rather not be in the middle of a global pandemic at this point that has just devastated the world. But this is going to make us better. Unfortunately, it probably won't be the last pandemic. Hopefully it will be in our lifetime. But there'll be more. And we are learning a lot from this. And I'm very keen to also hear what is the collective wisdom that is coming from this world's experience with this, and how can we better equip others in the future to navigate it.
Well, Lisa, I think we can talk for another hour, but I have to let you go. But thanks so much for taking the time out to join us. I hope I get to come see you soon, because before this, we was actually coming over to New Jersey, wasn't we? So hopefully we'll be able to come over and see you soon. But I appreciate you taking the time out to join us to share your experience and insight. It means a lot to us. And before I wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice, what would that be? And where can people connect with you if they want to say hello and reach out?
Best piece of advice, I would say, it is just be. Don't worry about trying to be something you're not, or trying to always put on the game face. We are at a time where there is acceptance in the world for people to just be. Whatever X is, just be this, just be that. You know, obviously we want to be caring people. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of trollers out there spreading negativity, but I think that's the minority, hopefully, of the world. Just be your authentic self, and you will relate to people in a way that you would not imagine possible, and you'll reap the benefits of that. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always inspired by things that go on around me, people in my world, and things that I hear about. So that's, people ask me where I get my article inspirations from. It's all of you. So thanks for continuing to inspire me. And thank you, Chris, for leading the way and putting yourself out there and role modeling empathy and vulnerability. I'm sure that your team just operates at a whole new level, knowing that you care and you understand because you live it too. And I join you in that.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks so much, Lisa. And also for everyone listening live on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you're tuning in from, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, and share. We want to share this with as many people as possible to help them and to show your support. If you're not already subscribed, head over to hrdealers.com/subscribe. You can subscribe via your favorite platform there. Apart from that, I'll let you go, Lisa, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay.
Likewise, stay safe, everybody. Wear your mask. It works.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.